This Friday is the great, joyous holiday of Purim. It's one of my favorite holidays. Usually the community gets together. We come together with the family, with the community. We have masks and costumes and celebration and music and dancing and celebrate being Jewish and celebrate the great miracle of Purim. Remember last year Purim was actually the last event before everything closed down for COVID. But Purim also has such a great and deep message, a message that's life-changing, a message that if we could apply it to our life, could change our life completely, change our outlook on life. Steve Jobs had the greatest impact, one of the greatest impact on our generation, founded Apple, iPhone, smartphones, iPads, and all the other technologies that changed our life, mostly for the good. He shares a story that he grew up, everyone knows that he was adopted, his parents gave him up, and then in college he dropped out. And then one day he was walking in the halls of his college, and he walked into a class where they taught calligraphy, and he said that class inspired him and changed and helped him to start his technology Apple. And when he goes through his life, and then he says, I want to tell you, he ends this talk, and he says, life is a whole bunch of dots that you can't understand when it's happening. Only when you look back in life and you can put all the dots together, you could understand how your whole life came together and how all the dots come together. This is the story of Purim. You know, you ever heard the saying, are we gonna say the ganze Megillah, the whole Megillah? So everyone knows the story of Purim. There was a king, Achashverosh, and he got a Jewish wife, Esther, and Haman wanted to kill the Jews, and Esther told him not to kill the Jews, and he saved the Jewish people. But if you read the story of the Megillah, it has 10 chapters. And it's quite surprising that the first 2 chapters are actually read in a synagogue. And it would seem like the first 2 chapters of the Megillah are not relevant even to the story of Purim. You know, sometimes you ask someone a question, they start, well, yesterday in the morning I got up and had breakfast. So get to the point. Why are you telling me about breakfast if I'm asking you a question that happened in the middle of the day? But you know, some people love to go from the beginning and say points that are not even relevant. It would seem like the first 2 chapters of the Megillah, not only it's not relevant, but it's not even not relevant to the story of Purim, but it's not even appropriate to be read in the synagogue. What does it say in the beginning of the Megillah? It says in the beginning of the Megillah that there was a king Achashverosh. Just to give you a little bit of history, this story happened 2,400 years ago. It was after the destruction of the first temple. The Babylonians destroyed the temple, but the Persians, Paras, who Achashverosh was the king, had a war with the Babylonians, or won the war, and they took over. So 3 years after the war, which Achashverosh, the king, was involved in the war, he says, let me make a party. So for 180 days, he made a party for all his advisors and guards, and all the aristocrats, you know, the fancy, very successful people. And he made a party for them. And after the 180 days, he says, you know what, I'm going to make another party for 1 week, but that's for the simple people. And at this party, we could do whatever we want. You know, for the 180 days, you had to wear white gloves, you had to come in tuxedos, you had to eat a certain way, drink a certain way. You couldn't really live it the way you wanted to live it. But Achashverosh didn't come, his background wasn't from a world of sophistication, a world of people that lived a life in a very more dignified way. He was actually a horse trainer. He was a drunk. And he said, these 180 days was confined me. I want to have a party. We can do whatever we want. And everyone can drink what they want, behave how they want. And during that week, he calls his wife Vashti. He says, Vashti, come out. I want you to come and show everyone how beautiful you are. He even wanted her to come out without any clothes. You know, he must have drunk a lot. And his wife said, absolutely not. And he got so angry and he killed his wife. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2 talks about now he has no wife. He started a beauty contest. And he told everyone, I want you to become beautiful and dress up beautiful and come dressed with the most gorgeous jewelry and the most exciting clothes. And then it tells us how everyone got dressed up and spent 6 months to beautify themselves. And then he chose Esther. That's what it says. So the question you may ask, why would the Megillah have 45 verses telling us these details of the story? It could have just said in a few verses, in 4 or 5 verses. It was King Achashverosh. He had a party. He asked his wife to come out, and he killed his wife. And because he didn't have a wife, he had his wife, then he picked Esther. And then you go into the whole story of Haman, the whole story of Mordechai. Why 45 verses of details of these things that you think it's not even appropriate to be reading in a synagogue? So someone once shared a very, very powerful thing. He said like this: life is what happens between the moments when you're waiting for life to happen. What does that mean? We in life are always waiting for the next moment, right? We wake up in the morning, waiting to get out, to get to work. We get to work, we're waiting for the moment to go have lunch. We have lunch, we're waiting for the moment, oh, when is the lunch going to be over? And I go back to work. When you go to work, when is the moment I can go home? When you come home and say, oy vey, when is this going to end? And when could I go back and be with my friends? Or right now, life is about making money. And then once we make our money, we say to ourselves, we have no one around us anymore to enjoy the money. And we always, when we're making money, we say, hey, when am I going to have enough money that I can retire? And then we retire, you say, hey, why didn't I enjoy the moments before? And that's how life goes. And this is what the Megillah wants to teach us. You see, we're always waiting for the complete picture. We're literally waiting for the beautiful picture. But you know what? Life is not a picture. Life is a puzzle. And there's so many pieces to the puzzle. And the only way the picture becomes perfect is every piece is used. And that's what life is about. So we look at some things as challenging moments of life. Oh, I'd rather not have it. But you know what? That's part of the puzzle of our life. And every part is needed. And that's the only way you can have a complete life. Let's look at the story of Purim. 3 years into his kingship, Achashverosh makes a party. And he kills his wife. 4 years later, Esther becomes his wife. When does the Haman story happen? 5 years later. So that's 12 years now. Now you may think that these are just pieces of the puzzle, just a coincidence. Achashverosh became the king. 3 years later he kills his wife. 4 years later he finds another wife, Esther. And 5 years later Haman comes into the picture. But when you look back, you realize that for 9 years, 100 months, God was putting the puzzle together of saving the Jewish people. Every piece, everything that happened was another piece of the puzzle. So here you see that God not only thinks about the big things, but it's the small things also in life that God thinks about. You see, my dear friends, this is our life too. You know, every single day of our life is a piece of a puzzle. Every single job we have is a piece of the puzzle. Never look at something like, oh my God, this is just a waste. I'm waiting for the big picture. No, every piece of the puzzle is part of the big picture of our life. And that moment could actually change our life. And this is something that we have to continuously always think about. And this is something that the Torah teaches us and the Megillah teaches us. I want to conclude with another very powerful point. So when the story, actually this answers why it tells us the first 2 chapters is to tell us that these stories are not just stories that are not relevant, but they're part of the puzzle that saved the Jewish people. And that teaches us also in our life. Another very powerful point is when Mordechai told Esther to go and see the king, Esther was concerned. Esther wasn't really a wife of a king. She was almost like a prisoner. And she said, if I'm going to go to the king, he may kill me just like he killed Vashti. So what did Mordechai tell her? It is very possible that because of all of that you ended up becoming the wife of the king is because for this moment to save the Jewish people. Who knows that maybe because of this moment you became the queen? The question's asked, why would Mordechai tell her that? Who knows, maybe this is the reason. Why did Mordechai just tell her? This is the reason why you became the queen. Don't shy away from this moment. This is the reason why you became the queen, is in order to save the Jewish people. So the Rebbe said something like this. That Mordechai was telling Esther, I'm sure many times you're wondering, why me? Why did I end up in such a situation? I'm a Jewish woman, married to a king who was an anti-Semite, who hated the Jewish people, that wasn't Jewish. So many times you can say, why me? Why did God put me there? So Mordechai is telling me a day, who knows? We don't know why God chose you. But if you're in that situation, you have a responsibility to save the Jewish people. And this is the same thing for each one of us. Many times we ask, why me? Why do I have this piece of the puzzle in my life? Why am I going through this sickness, this challenge with my spouse, with my child, with myself? Why me? We don't ask that why me because we don't know why. God put us in that situation. The only thing we have to say is, what are we going to do in this particular situation? I'll conclude with the story of Rabbi Mendel Futerfas. He's a great Chabad Chassid. Then in Russia, he was put in prison because he was spreading Yiddishkeit, Judaism, and helping Jewish people. And he was sitting in prison with other Jewish people and non-Jewish people that the communist government felt they shouldn't be in the street. And they asked him, Mendel Futerfas, how are you always so happy? So he said, you're upset because you're in prison and you always want to get out. And you feel like here is wasting and rotting away your life. Of course I want to be with my family. But being here in prison is part of the puzzle of my life. And I could serve God even being here in prison. When Mendel Futerfas came out of Russia eventually, he was once talking to a group of yeshiva students. And he asked them, tell me, who is the holiest person in the world? So they said, Abraham, Moses, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rambam, Rabbi Akiva. And Mendel said, no. You are the holiest person in the world because your puzzle, your life has pieces that nobody else could do. Then he asked them, where is the holiest place in the world? So people said, the Temple Mount, Hebron. He said, no. The holiest place in the world is where you are right now. It is waiting for you to make something special there. And then he asked them, what is the holiest time of the year? They said, oh, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. He says, no. The holiest time of the year is this moment. There's no other moment like this. My dear friends, let's take this message of Purim. Let's look at the story of Purim and realize that in every situation we may be in, the job that we have, the family that we have, the friends that we have, the community that we live, we have to make the utmost of it because that is the pieces of puzzle of our life. And only at the end of our life will we have the complete picture and see the beauty of every piece. But the goal is that you make every piece meaningful and inspirational and holy. Happy Purim.